to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. Wednesday, July 16th. We're back. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Mike Wright.
Hello.
How you doing, boys?
That's all you get. That's all you get this morning, Kyle.
Okay.
You're in charge, Kyle. Carry the show for us. Come on.
I can do that. You know, with Mike, we've been friends for a while, but you got to kind of pick your spots to figure out where is Mike at in the small talk. It's usually like, I don't want to go there. I don't even want to like start the conversation. So I kind of know how to move forward, but a lot of our conversations, Mike, are online. So we skip the small talk.
Yeah, that's right. We get into it. We get into the business. But I'm over here just a trade happened in the Dino Junior League, and it's just trying to absorb it. I'm trying to take it all in. I'm trying to understand.
Me too.
We can get into that whenever you want, Kyle. I'll just tee you up for that. Maybe we never do. Maybe we just talk about it at the top, never see what the trade is, and everyone just gets real mad.
I'm the captain of this ship, and I am really mad about this trade because the discussions I was having with this manager, I was going to bring up on this podcast. I was thinking of all of our listeners, everyone that's a part of our community, and thinking, I'd love to have this conversation, just tease it out.
You were going to try and leverage the show to bully someone into doing a trade. I know, I can see right through you, Kyle.
This
Your
podcast
smile
this
says
medium,
I'm right.
I was going to try to bully an employee through this podcast, and then Betz went behind my back. And what's interesting is that the crux of this trade, there's some really good players that Betz somehow, so it was a Matthew and Matthew deal. Matthew Betz, Matthew Pingree, the Falcon, made a deal, but, you know, part of this trade was me. I was going to trade away Josh Allen, and we were talking about quarterback tiers today and how you assess that in Dynasty, how you assess that in SuperFlex, and I was like, you know what? Let's talk this out. I wanted to slow things down, and now I can't, because the players that I wanted are gone, and Betz got all the good ones, and I'm just left as the worst team in the league. I talked about it last week. I don't know if you guys know, I'm still the worst team in the league.
Yeah,
we all know, man. Moves. Everybody knows.
Okay, well.
Everyone knows, Kyle.
Maybe after this trade, I'll run our draft analyzer, which you can get in the Ultimate Draft Kit, and maybe it'll bump me up a little bit, but it probably won't.
It probably won't. We've already run it. We've already run it after the trade. You're still at the bottom.
That's okay. I have a plan, and I have draft picks. So I do think I'm moving in the right direction for a rebuild. I just need a lot of help. I need to get all the picks right. And that is the best part about Dynasty. If you get the picks right, this is easy. This is the easiest game ever. That's what I really want to tell people.
You make a really good point. The years that I hit on my first round pick compared to the years where it's just a complete swing and miss, my team does seem to get a lot better or worse.
See? This game is simple. You pick the good players, you move on, ignore all the noise. And I don't have any good players left on my team aside from Josh Allen. But on this episode, we will be talking quarterback tiers, talking about how you assess and whether you need to actually jump a tier. I think the common question I get when people ask about trades in Dynasty is, I have this quarterback, I kind of see him as a low-end QB1. What would it take for me to get up to that elite tier? And so I've taken the Ballers Dynasty rankings and kind of grouped them together in different buckets. I want to see if you guys agree or disagree with me and see where you guys stand. But I really wanted to start this off with a quarterback question. So this is a quick question of which quarterback stats matter in fantasy. And we'll kind of bat it around here. But at the end of the day, the true difference makers, if you look at what correlates year over year, and what correlates with fantasy points, this is shocking, guys. It's rushing quarterbacks.
I knew it.
Breaking news.
I knew it.
Kyle, you were deep in the research this offseason. I knew it. I could tell. You were onto something.
I was pulling all the levers. I was, talking to all these deep, data researchers, and they found out that, yes, if your quarterback runs the ball, it's really good. And rush attempts and rushing yards per game, they correlate really well year over year. And so we kind of understand that. We'll talk about the tier of, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels. We know that they're really good at football. And we know that that is how you can sustain it. But what else do you guys look at? I'll go through some other stats in a second, what correlates. But like for you, when you're assessing this year, Mike, you're looking at your projections, the ultimate draft kit. What are the things that you're paying attention to as you're statting players out, like the TD rate, and those type of things? Like what matters to you the most at the end of the day? I know fantasy points matter, but like what stats matter?
I mean, it starts with, does a quarterback run, because they become safer. The baseline, if you're in a 4-point per passing touchdown, I mean, number one, you get like that little extra juice of those extra 2 points, those sweet 2 points when Josh Allen runs it in. But it's like, okay, if Josh Allen runs for, this is the way I think about it. If he runs for 40 yards, he just threw an extra touchdown. I mean, and like that's wild to those things add up pretty quick. So I mean, that's where it starts, and then then it's just their past success, projecting what the offense looks to be. Did they add any pieces? Offensive line matters a lot to me, because there's some guys who can get it done without a line, and then there's some guys who cannot. So those are the things that I start with, and just what's a floor, what's a ceiling. Okay, so let's find out where we truly want to stat somebody.
Yeah, I think to go along with Mike's point there, along the lines of, offensive line play, scheme, system, pass rate, like all those things are kind of what you're looking at to determine whether or not these non-mobile quarterbacks can have that outlier season. And it's obviously very difficult to project. You need touchdowns to go right in that situation. But I think touchdown rate is one of those things that even still, like we all know touchdown rate is pretty fluky year to year. There's some guys that historically have done it for years, but there's other guys that you'll see kind of ping pong or have an outlier season. They come crashing back down to earth. But even still, like in redraft leagues, people are still overreacting to what just happened the year prior. Like Jared Goff this past season coming off career high in touchdown rate. You should factor in some regression there, especially losing Ben Johnson, right? Baker Mayfield, another guy who popped last year in a huge way in touchdown rate. Yeah, they lose Liam Cohen, Chris Godwin coming off an ankle surgery. We'll see how that goes. Left tackle, going to miss the first 4 games at least. So there's spots where you want to identify, I think, for the pocket passers too, like regression candidates.
Yes.
Man, in dynasty leagues, in redraft leagues last year, CJ Stroud was like the poster child of this, where he was going with his ADP. So yeah, the rushing, obviously very sticky year over year. The passing touchdowns, not super sticky, but at the same time, we can use things like, supporting cast, the Vegas projections from a team total standpoint, that kind of thing to help us. But really, those are hard to predict. And that's kind of where I think the edge is in fantasy, is trying to identify some of those guys who might come crashing back down to earth and some guys who we think can maybe take a step forward and take the leap this year.
Apart from just looking at the mobile guys, the stat that correlates best with what somebody scores in fantasy points the next year is looking at their fantasy points per dropback. And the reason why dropbacks matter is because it also factors in scrambles. And we know how valuable a scramble is. We know that Jaden Daniels just basically obliterated that statistic this past year. And it's something you can project from college. Like, who is the quarterback that doesn't just have design runs, but they're willing to take off? So that's why when we talk about Justin Fields, who I'm wearing a Justin Fields shirt today, it's like, it's one thing to say this is a mobile quarterback. It's another thing to say you are taking off while the defense is sitting back in coverage, and you are just giving your team so many opportunities to extend plays, and it's really helpful for fantasy. So we will reference fantasy points per dropback today, including a couple of guys that stand out that you maybe didn't think about. And I'll just throw in a couple other thoughts. Stats that are, they're better at like shade. They're a shade of a color. They're not really like used for painting as a whole. It's just like a deeper shade is like ADOT. ADOT,
what
can be.
What do you paint with, Kyle?
I'm painting my son's room right now, and so maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
And you're using shades of color, right?
I'm saying it's not the main primary color that you paint with. It's like a secondary, or a tertiary color.
Okay.
I knew Mike wasn't going to let that slide.
It's an accent color.
Ooh, okay. We'll call it an accent.
I think that's what you were trying to find. Where you paint. You don't go right to the walls and say we're doing the most obnoxious, vibrant color. We're gonna go with more of a neutral, and then we'll hit pops of color. You're saying that the pop of color is. Sorry, you go on.
ADOT is one of those things where you can look at it and say, this is really low, their depth of target, but it's kind of all over the map. When you look at last year, who had some of the lowest ADOTs? Tua, Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Jaden Daniels, 20% of his attempts were behind the line of scrimmage. So was Josh Allen. So there's those guys, and there's also the guys that were throwing deep a ton. Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, where like it's all over the map. So I'm just saying it's one of those statistics you can't just say good, bad. You need context with it. But I will say the one statistic that we see from college to the pros is how do they respond to pressure and can they improve that year to year? But it's not as sticky. So like CJ Stroud was really good at that his rookie year. Last year, the most pressures in the NFL, and that can also be an offensive line statistics. But, you know, Josh Allen, his rookie year, do you guys remember, it was like the completions were the problem, but also like he was just running with his head cut off. Last year, he was number 1 in the league in pressure to sack ratio. So he was the best in the league at doing that. So you can change over time, or you end up doing what Caleb Williams did, which was not great in college and then was really, really bad last year. I also will add that Jaden Daniels quietly had the 5th worst pressure to sack ratio. So year to year, that can be a bad thing. I just wanted to call it out as something of like, we're only projecting great things from him, but there are a couple of variables when we get to that tier that I want to bring up with Jaden Daniels because we've been here before with sophomore quarterbacks. So when we talk about all these quarterbacks today, keep these things in mind, but let's go to these tiers.
Dynasty rankings.
My perspective for quarterbacks, as I was researching for the show, is that it feels pretty stable. Like Mahomes has kind of been Mahomes in dynasty value for a very long time and hasn't really moved that much. This year, it feels a little different going into the season with Mahomes, but a lot of the times the quarterbacks that vault up here, there's a reason they are this good and they are valued this much. There are blips on the radar like Baker Mayfield after his rookie year, the QB2 in dynasty.
Yeah, I thought he made it to 2.
Yeah. That's and think about like Baker's trajectory on here of where he was. Okay, maybe it gets better. Okay, you don't have a starting job, to I guess I'll just hold on to Baker at the end of my bench. And now you have somebody that you are very excited to have in Dynasty, and especially in SuperFlex League. So we're talking mostly about these tiers and how they change in value. Last year, we talked about holding steady with Brock Purdy. I looked at our rankings and our discussion. The man got paid. So it's interesting to talk about those. But tier 1, I have Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson in this group I'm calling game changers. And it's hard to poke holes, but as somebody who's the Josh Allen manager, it was going to take a lot for me to trade him away. And Betz kind of swooped in there and took the trade from me. So why don't you talk about the trade real quickly, and then I will tell you why my deal was probably not as good as yours.
I thought we were going to go the whole episode without actually talking about it.
No, I'll bring it up.
Kind of disappointed in you, Kyle. So last night I was enjoying a lovely TV show, hanging out with the wife, and I get a message from the Falcon. Hey man, floating around some Rashee Rice in this league. I know you're a huge fan. Are you interested? It's like, yeah, let's see if we can make this work. And I didn't know if he wanted to go like, crazy trade or just like a 1-for-1 or a rookie pick or what. But he was talking about needing to upgrade at quarterback and potentially at tight end. He's also a huge Niners fan. I had George Kittle, and I pulled up, reminded myself in the draft analyzer, the reality of that I'm like a middle of the pack, but probably a playoff team. And that's the worst place to be, man. Like you either want to go all in or not. And I was like, man, this roster is declining somewhat quickly as some of the guys like Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, Kittle, obviously, but still great, Alvin Kamara. So he was like, I think I might go for it. I was like, great, I think I might rebuild. So we have this trade go through and we kind of worked through some of the details. But basically, the bottom line was I traded away Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith, which as an Eagles fan really hurt. Alvin Kamara and George Kittle. Got back Drake May, Rashee Rice, Tyler Warren, a first next year and a second next year. So the rebuild is on after this trade is kind of where I'm at. But yeah, losing Hurts and going to Drake May is obviously a projection. And, in doing so and going to a rookie tight end off of George Kittle, who I think is going to absolutely smash this year, definitely is kind of a signal to me like it's time to do a full rebuild here.
It's a strong rebuild, and mine was trying to get May and some pieces. So really, what I'm trying to ask about in this tier, if you're trading away somebody like Allen, Daniels, or Lamar, which I don't understand why you would need to for the most part, I would want somebody in the next couple of tiers and picks to be able to go there. So for me, the bare bones of the deal was Drake May, a first, and see what else there was for Josh Allen. And so I just want to tee that up for you, Mike. Would you do a deal like that? What would it take for you to trade away Josh Allen? Would it be May, a first, and you need something else?
If you're talking just those two players, then
Yeah.
I would need more than a first and May. Because I get the excitement for Drake May. I have some. I'm not as bullish as I guess Betz and Jason on the main show has been very vocally supportive of Drake May. So I would have needed more if those were just the two guys in the puzzle. But overall, like this trade is fun and it's great and it's like
it makes sense.
I like the point of sometimes when you get into trade negotiations, because it's really just one person wants something from the other guy, and then it's just the dynamic can be strange. But when you guys are just honest with each other, hey, I'm going to rebuild. And there's just, oh, cool, because I'm going to go for it. Perfect. We are a great match. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I won this trade. Well, I mean, in whose opinion? The team that's going for it got a bunch of pieces to go for it. They won the trade. Betz is rebuilding. He's got a lot of young guys and some picks. He won the trade. So I love it. This was an incredible negotiation. Well done, boys.
But I was supposed to be the one in that deal. Like it was me
well,
that started the conversation.
You snooze, you lose, man.
You got greedy, brother. I mean, come on. You just got to go for it. Kyle wanted like an extra fourth or something in this deal. And
yeah, definitely. Done. That's what I needed. I needed that in this league.
I should mention in this league, in this trade, this is a one quarterback league that Dino Jr. is. So in SuperFlex, Josh or any of these guys, Josh Allen, Jane Daniels, Lamar, he's going to cost you the moon to go get them. That it's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but like you're probably sacrificing your team's chances of like being competitive by trying to go acquire one of these guys, like multiple firsts and a young, exciting quarterback or something. It costs so much. These are not the guys I'm trying to trade for, but I would obviously love to have them, on my SuperFlex team. So that's just the difference. I think in one quarterback leagues, you can go get these guys in SuperFlex.
Right.
Be ready to pay everything.
Kyle,
I think at the end of
I'm going to put you on the spot and make you responsible for something. Because this is a study I have not done for quite a while, and it's for these types like Josh Allen, where running is such a huge part of the game. Like if you've been with the fantasy footballers for a while, Cam Newton, aka Booty Scootin' Cam Newton, we were getting towards a time period where I was starting to get a little concerned. So I went and I did a research thing of how many years, not just age, but how many years of that level of rushing has a quarterback held up to. And, I'm looking at it, obviously we're in like a renaissance here of truly the elite mobile quarterbacks who can do everything. So that's not that I'm going to take it away, but I looked back historically, the prolific rushers, and I came to the conclusion, I'm like, hey, I think I'm out on Cam Newton this year because I'm afraid of the running. I ended up being 1 year too early, but it was like the next year it was done. It was completely over for Cam Newton. Now he had some other stuff, like some off, like car accidents and things that definitely contributed to it. But it's like Josh Allen just turned 29. He's played 7 years in the league. And I'm not saying Josh Allen can't shift his game into becoming more of a pocket passer and every once in a while, or take some goal line and things like that. But how long can you actually do that? Because your bets, you are totally right. Trading Josh Allen right now to go get him in a SuperFlex, you're going to pay so much. But historically, how many more years does he have to run like that? Like, can he turn into I know Lamar just did 4,040. Like, can we get back there with Josh Allen? I don't know. These are So, Kyle, I think that this needs to be a priority study just to see.
For my team?
Yeah. Just do this for yourself, and then maybe we'll.
But then also write an article about it.
Yeah, maybe we'll let the people know about it.
So my thinking for my team is just, let's say I want to rebuild. I hope that Drake May could be something like Josh Allen in 2 to 3 years. And I think that Allen still has at least 3 to 4 years of just being elite. He's about to set the all-time record, by the way, this season for rushing touchdowns for a quarterback. And he's only 29. So I think the way that the offense functions, it's like this. We know this team's good. They're number 1 in team implied totals for this season. They're favored, in every single game, Betz?
Think so. Maybe all but one, but either that or every game. Yeah, they should win a ton of games.
I'm viewing it as 3 to 4 years, and I think the value remains for at least 2 to 3 of those. So, there will be a drop-off. I agree with you, Mike, where we can start having that conversation when we get to 31, 32. But I think we're still too early.
But sometimes you want to be out a year early because you want to.
I agree.
You want to get the bag instead of be holding the bag.
29 still feels young.
But it's not just 29. It's we are we 7 years in? Is that
since 2018? So
you do the math, man. So yeah,
I can't.
Experience.
I always mix it up.
7 years, 7 years of experience. Just I don't know. It's worth. Yeah, I agree. I think we have a few more years of it, but we haven't had to talk about this because we're the rushing quarterbacks as they have been coming up. We haven't got to one expiring yet and losing that superpower.
I think this is a safe space, Mike, to bring up questions like that. To just
That's
say,
my favorite part about this show is that that this show has a lot more just philosophy and historical trends. It's not just about week to week to week. It's we're zoomed out a little bit more than the fantasy footballers is zoomed in for the redraft.
And Jason and Andy could never, they just they can't go there.
Of course, only I may philosophize.
Yeah, I will say the statistic we have about Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and also Jared Goff is that their teams averaged a crazy amount of touchdowns, 3.8 total touchdowns per game. And looking back over the last decade, if your teams did that, these are like historic teams. All of those teams regressed by at least 10 total touchdowns. So I think we're looking at these teams and saying, how does it go a little different in 2025? These are really good teams. These are really good players. And I don't fault anyone if they want to take, these three, Allen, Daniels, Lamar. You can make the case for any one of them to be QB1, and I get it. I totally do. So Any last thoughts, Betz, here?
I mean, that's an interesting stat you just shared about Lamar, Josh Allen, and Jared Goff being on 3 teams that obviously we all love in fantasy, but it's hard to just do the same thing over and over again in the NFL, especially when greatness is the standard. And for all 3 of these franchises, they were incredible last year. So just naturally, I'm thinking kind of trickle-down effect for this year. What does that mean for the offense if they do score fewer touchdowns? And man, in redraft leagues, literally every Lion we're counting on them based off ADP. So just something to think about.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and we'll talk about the next tier. All right, so I want to see if you guys disagree with me when we get to tier 2. And once again, I'm going through our rankings that you can find in the Dynasty Pass, but I'm calling this tier elite but imperfect. And it's Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow. That's it. And I can see how people could have Hurts in that top group. I could see how you could put Burrow in that top group, depending on your scoring system. If it's 6-point passing, I get it. These guys feel really stable. I'm not going to really poke a ton of holes in who they are and that they're elite. But do you guys see them as a tier down from those top 3?
Go ahead, Betz.
Yeah, I think in some ways, just speaking to Burrow, we think for this year, the pass volume is still going to be incredible because of the concerns on defense, which is basically what happened last year. And you've got the continuity with Jamar Chase and you've got T. Higgins and, it's kind of running it back from last year. The problem is there's examples of this year after year after year where you just think, oh, insane volume, therefore insane touchdown production, and let's just keep doing the same thing. He's a pocket passer, right? So there will be times in his career over the next 3-4 years where he will disappoint because of a lack of touchdowns. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but the perception of Joe Burrow will swing year to year depending on how many touchdowns he's throwing, and that's obviously very hard to predict. So I love Burrow. Obviously, I just think there's a little more variance there. The thing with Hurts that's interesting is like if you just look at, you mentioned the things that carry over year is the rushing and the production there. But man, he has so many of those fantasy points from the tush push. And yes, we're going to get that this year. But as Mike just kind of raised the question of like, at what age does the rushing production start to decline a little bit? Jalen Hurts obviously is still in his prime, 27 years old. But next year, let's say the tush push does get banned because, Jeremy's Packers are soft and they push for it again in the offseason. And apparently it was close to getting banned this year. But if it does happen next year.
Oh, man, it's so soft.
Jeremy is soft.
Jeremy is so imagine rooting for that team. I mean, come on. If that goes away, like I think Hurts is capable as a passer. He obviously has major flaws. If he's not taking off and running the way Lamar and Jane Daniels have, I don't know, man. Hurts feels a little shaky. Like I love him for this year, but like for the next 2-3 years, if that tush push goes away, and he's 29, 30, like, are you going to project the rushing volume that you would from these other guys? I don't know. So I think it's fair to have these guys behind the other three names. And obviously, like, kind of talking through the Hurts scenario and understanding where my team is at in trajectory, like, that's why I moved on from Hurts in that trade.
But you traded before the podcast, so you could say that.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that's just something to consider for the next couple seasons.
We expect the Eagles to up their pass rate. Just to give you a number, 48.9% pass rate is the third lowest of any team since 2016. And they have a new offensive coordinator, but that's kind of Jalen Hurts' thing, going all the way back to Alabama. It's a different coordinator every single year.
That's crazy.
It really is wild, and it's a testament to him and adversity and changing. And there was a year, though, in 2023 where we got the Brian Johnson year, and that felt like a train wreck for the Eagles, especially the second half of the season. So we're not projecting that. It's going to be a good offense. We expect them to pass a bit more. I did want to throw this stat out for Burrow because things in the NFL, they change drastically year to year and how defenses approach. And the Bengals saw the lowest percentage of zone coverage in the NFL, 60%. It's just a wild rate when you consider the rest of the league is usually around 70 to 72%. And so I just love thinking about how teams look at certain players. We'll talk about Bo Nix in a second too. It's like, okay, here's the film on this player. Here's how defenses approached this player. And yet we're not going to just do the same thing every single time. So I'm just expecting things to change. They also ran a ton of 12 personnel last year, which is not something they've done in the past where they used two tight ends. So just there's variables here. They're imperfect, but I want these players on my team. You have Burrow on your Dynasty team, Mike. Any thoughts about him?
I'm pretty happy that he's on my Dynasty
you also
team.
have the stack.
I have him and Jamar Chase. It's awesome, guys. Like when you look and two players have given you 60+ fantasy points, it's pretty awesome. I wanted to jump in though of the pointing out how things shift. And I mean, coming into last year, you had those four. Well, you had the mobile guys. Mahomes was still being ADP drafted extremely high, but then we had Stroud. We had Richardson up there. Obviously, colossal failure on Richardson's part, and then Stroud really underperformed. And then you had this pack of Burrow, Kyler, Dak, and Jordan Love, all within ADP about 13 picks of each other. And it was league to league of who wants who. Joe Burrow last year was not anywhere close to as sought after as he is this year because he had a fire campaign, and then the 2 years ago he had the arm injury. So those definitely factor in, but just a point of like he was like you could have seen him going QB 10 in some leagues of like people prefer, hey, I'm going to take the shot on Jordan Love or Dak. And now it's universally agreed upon that no, Joe Burrow he's this tier 2 type of guy. So that's just like what Betz was pointing out of Joe Burrow and guys like this and Baker, their value will shift year to year. I think Burrow is about as good as a bet as you can make it for a pure pocket passer, because when he's healthy, he comes through. But just pointing it out, letting people remember simply 1 year ago where people thought about Joe Burrow compared to these other quarterbacks.
I will say, I like the person Joe Burrow even more after watching the quarterback documentary. And I know I've always been a big
But you liked him
Burrow guy.
negative points.
No.
So, yes.
Not as a player.
No,
not
as a
player at all.
person.
Now, I mean, I'm not going to ever dress the same way as Joe. He can pull it off. I can't. I'm cool with that. But I think I just respected the way that he game plans and just the way that he thinks about the game. So, Cousins, on the other hand, it was a difficult watch.
That was depressing.
What
a great guy.
I haven't watched this year.
It's tough.
I love that, like, just the human element of it. Like, Kirk is so real. And he's like, yeah, like, I didn't play good enough. They should play Michael Penix. And he called him as soon as he found out he was going to get benched to congratulate him and kind of coach him up and all those things. So I'm a bigger Kirk Cousins fan than I was before. I disagree, Kyle. Burrow seems so boring, man. He seems so
now
boring in
Burrow's
this
the
show.
boring one. Kirk Cousins was the boring
Betz.
one last year.
Dude, when you get your haircut at Great Clips, okay? And you get a nice milkshake from Cookout on the way home
Is
from
that
a game.
Burrow or
Kyle knows.
Cousins?
That's Cousins.
Okay, I was going to I'm like, Burrow's that Great Clips guy?
No, with that hair, are you kidding me? Absolutely not. Yeah, no. I'm on Team Kirk. Burrow's, he's overrated.
Kirk was tough. I have some family friends that are in a couple of the shots, and I just know that it's so tough knowing like where it's
Kyle.
gonna. Yeah, just dropping that in there.
You wanted to just throw that in? You and Kirk are boys?
I didn't say that, but I have some.
He
people
said he knows someone who knows Kirk Cousins.
They're family members. All right, moving on to tier 3, and it's interesting. This group, I have Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert. I'm just calling them QB1s from the AFC West because it's an awesome division, and Nix is the one that I want to bring up. I would love to talk about Herbert because he's my favorite quarterback on the planet, but Nix, I think,
Justin Herbert is everyone's favorite underperforming quarterback.
How dare you?
Like
How dare you say that? I
saw a tweet. I can't remember, and this is not to throw shade, but I just highlight the point of, shoot, I'm sorry, I don't remember whose name, or I would credit you, but the quote was like, if Herbert were traded to the Bucs, like I think the Bucs would be Super Bowl favorites, and it's like, okay. I mean, like, I'm not. That's a fine take to have. I'm not crushing the take. I am saying it's been a while, guys, since we've seen Justin Herbert really help our fantasy teams.
Right. To 30-plus touchdown. That's the kind of stuff that we want. And we can talk about Herbert. Did you see that Jim Harbaugh went on the Rich Eisen show and said that he had a dream? He woke up in the middle of the night about Justin Herbert. I love he brought it up on the show, and I just was like, this is everything.
Oh, no.
This is everything. Anyway, let's go back to Bo Nix, because way, way beyond anything I think any of us thought, probably what the Broncos thought, in year one and in year one for fantasy. It's one thing to make the playoffs, which they haven't done in almost a decade. It's another thing to be a difference maker for fantasy. But if you look at the game plan, this is the part where, when I brought up earlier about how defenses shift year to year, the plan for the Broncos was keep it short and get it in second and manageable, because 70% of their first down plays were either a run, a screen, or Nix was doing some type of RPO. So they wanted to get it manageable. They were dead last in pre-snap motion, and only 17% of their plays went like for big plays, 10 plus yards. It was 29th in the NFL. So it was a lot of short stuff. That can work. And even though his ADOT was really low, he runs the ball, and he would take the deep shots at certain points of the game, and it would work. These Marvin Mims plays, Sutton obviously had a good touchdown season. But Nix, we have him at QB7. Any worry about that rank? Betz, I'll start with you. It was like, there any worry about that rank and a year from now, the conversation we're going to be having?
I think Nix is one of those guys who, when we look back at the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if he has an awesome season for fantasy. I also wouldn't be surprised if he's just kind of stuck in no man's land for fantasy, because the defense is so good, and the weaponry is still like a major question mark. I know that they, got some guys that are exciting and all those things, but like Sean Payton cannot help himself
Michael
to give.
Thomas 2.0 is getting ready.
Goodness gracious.
He's on my team, so he's going to be great.
That's Pat Bryant, by the way, for anybody that's wondering who the next Michael Thomas is, according to Sean Payton. But like Sean Payton loves to have these rotations and sub packages and all these things. And like, Sutton's a very good wide receiver. I don't know if he's elite. I don't think he is personally, but like he doesn't have that guy. Evan Ingram, we'll see what he has left in the tank. It's been a couple of disappointing seasons. Like at some point, it kind of feels like maybe the weaponry is lacking to really give him that massive, massive ceiling. And you say, okay, maybe he'll run the ball enough to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I could see a scenario where that happens. The problem is like last year they had 0 running games. So maybe Bo Nix had more of those rush attempts to kind of compensate for it. What do they do this year? Go out and, sign J.K. Dobbins. They draft R.J. Harvey. Like I think they'll have a competent running game this year at least, which they did not have last year, behind one of the best offensive lines in football. So I just have a tough time seeing where for fantasy in one season, you need some crazy kind of back and forth shootout affairs. You need either that or rushing production to be a top tier guy. That it kind of feels like Nix probably finishes like a back end quarterback 1 and isn't someone that you had to have this year. Now, this is Dynasty. I think there's a path where he has a great career and he's doing his thing for years and years to come, and he's a top 12 quarterback for a couple years in a row. Like I definitely think that's possible. But I struggle to see like a huge ceiling for Bo Nix personally.
Mike?
I think I can agree with that. We often, probably too often, we perform the exercise of what could go right instead of the what could go wrong. And because I like Bo Nix, I think he is exciting. I think he's way more exciting than Drake May. And there's people that I think that are on the complete other side of that argument, but it's the like for Bo Nix, 5.1, a 5.1 touchdown rate. Like there exists a world that is that's the best it will ever get, and he's just Bo Nix is back down to a 4.6, 4.7, average, slightly above average in his touchdown rate. So with the cast of characters around him, they really need to hit. They got to figure out Marvin Mims. We're back on the Marvin Mims propaganda train of, he's over the offseason. He's been looking great. The dude couldn't get on the field for more than like 30% of snaps. The jokes about Michael Thomas 2.0, but it's just one of these other guys really does have to step up because Evan Ingram, I think, is a good player and a good addition to this team. Historically, Evan Ingram is not going to really help your touchdown rate because that is not what he does. So I got concerns about those things and concerns of that play calling. Kyle, you were saying like this is what they do because Sean Payton at the end of everything, he had Drew Brees, so he didn't feel like it. Sean Payton was like a secret high T guy. He's like, I want my running backs to go to the offense, and then it's like, oh, Drew Brees, fine, Hall of Fame quarterback, you can go out and do your thing. So what if the high T it comes out this year? What if we're all exposed to that, and it's Dobbins and Harvey are great? So things could go wrong, but I do believe that he is appropriately ranked for when you weigh in all of the things. But that massive ceiling. Bo Nix jumping into a top 3 situation would be not impossible, but pretty surprising.
I think that's a good way to put it because the offensive line is really good as well. And Peyton comes up with a game plan that works.
And Javonte we cannot stress this enough. Javonte was so incredibly bad. Except for
behind one of the best offensive lines in football.
Except for a handful of carries. And every single time one of those carries, you're like, oh, yeah. Ooh, there it is. We are so back, Javonte. And then he would say, no, I am not back. I am so sorry, everybody.
I saw a Javonte stat. I'm going to not be able to give credit, but somebody basically said that like on first down, they decided not to run the ball with him at one of the lowest rate in the league. Like eventually they knew what his best superpower was for the team. It's pass protection. And so they decided to not run the ball consistently with him when he was on the field. It just slowly kind of phased him out as that workhorse guy. This is sad. We'll see with Nix. 60% of his targets were under 10 yards. He had the most batted balls down in the NFL. That's fluky, but there are guys like Baker, who's just his whole career. Baker's kind of been that dude.
They like throwing the buzz cuts.
I've never heard it called that.
I've never called it that before, but I'm going to see if that sticks.
That was nice.
A buzz cut ball.
Classic buzz cut ball. All right, let's take a break. We'll talk about another tier. We are on to tier 4, and I think this is where I want to center our conversation. We'll talk about some of the other guys, but I'm calling them back in QB1s, and there are some young guys in this group that we think can make the tier jump. But I think my question that I've been having, and I've seen it pop up in our Discord channel, is guys in this 4th or 5th tier, are they good enough where I can just stick with them? Or if I'm in a SuperFlex league, what do I need to do to move up? So the guys in this group are Jordan Love, Drake May, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, and Baker Mayfield. So these are all guys that we think can be QB1s, or they're priced in a way where they're basically a top 12 quarterback in your dynasty league. And yet they don't feel like they're like going to crush. They feel like guys that you want, but not the next tier up. So I want to bring up Jordan Love because he's at the top of this tier.
Yep. I am so stubborn and unwilling to hear the other arguments about Jordan Love.
What's your take, Mike?
I
don't know where you land on Love.
I am in.
I think we're all in.
I am in that Jordan Love is a good quarterback. I am in that LaFleur would rather have a more pass-heavy offense than what happened at the end of last year, where Josh Jacobs was just this fantasy star winning championships on every roster he was on. I think that it swings back and it's more Jordan Love this year.
Yeah, the distribution of touchdowns were very different than what they were the year before. And I'm just going to whisper this stat because I mentioned fantasy points per dropback earlier. But Jordan Love, who was on a down year, would you say he had a down year at QB 17 or it felt that way?
Oh, big disappointment for what we were expecting.
What if I told you you had a higher fantasy points per drop back in 2024 than Joe Burrow?
I would say I need you to prove that.
I will prove it to you later. So remember, he was hurt for 2 games. He missed those. They also ran the ball a ton. So that's why fantasy points per drop back can be helpful, because it shows the intention of when they throw, when they scramble. And he started off hot. He was the QB3 through the first 7 weeks. And then the TD rate just crumbled in the second half when Josh Jacobs went on his crazy run. But Jordan Love is not even 27 years old. And it's an offense that we really like. They're favored in each of their first 8 games. I love finding out, which stretches of the season that I can at least count on certain players or like lean into them. So Jordan Love is one of those guys that I really, really like. I will give you one more statistic that is not as happy.
Was the groin injury, that was week 8, right? I'm looking through the game log, in week 8 against Jacksonville, he was 63%.
The groin?
Yeah, wasn't that what it was? Because he hurt his ankle.
Yes.
Right at the very of week 1, he missed 2 weeks. He came back QB2, QB16, QB4, QB11, and then he leaves a game early against Jacksonville, and then his numbers from that point on were pretty rough for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and to speak to that too, their play calling was shifted massively when those games happened. Like in week 1, he was great against the Eagles, and then like you said, had the injury on the last play of the game. Basically, we saw Malik Willis get 2 starts somehow. I mean, Matt LaFleur is a wizard. They go 2-0 in those games, by the way.
He looked like a good quarterback.
But I know. But they literally were not throwing the football. The game plan was very clear. Let's kind of hide Malik Willis and make this easy on him. So their season-long data, and then you throw in the injury to Jordan Love with the groin injury, the season-long data is skewed as far as what their play calling tendencies were. In the healthy games that Jordan Love was not affected by that groin injury, so basically looking at kind of in between the knee and the groin and then the end of the season, they had a plus 3.6% pass rate over expectation. If that mark was extrapolated over the entire season, would have been 7th in the NFL as the 7th highest. So I'm with Mike in that I think LaFleur's play calling last year was just saying, what are the circumstances and let's adjust around it, which is what great coaches do. And there's a lot of signs saying like it's going to be tough for Josh Jacobs to do what he did last year from a workload standpoint. So there's a lot of factors where all of a sudden you look up and you're like, 4,000 yards for Jordan Love. I kind of forgot that he could do that. Just 2 years ago, this guy was the top 5 quarterback in fantasy because of a 4,000 yard and 32 touchdown season. So I'm with you guys. I think Love is the guy that I'm most intrigued by, kind of reminding us of like, oh yeah, he's great for fantasy and he has those upside games. The only thing holding me back a little bit though is, man, these pass catchers are not ideal. Like we talked about Matthew Golden a lot. Dontavian Wicks.
That's kind of been the
can't catch a cold.
But that's like the same thing that is Jordan Love has played with for his career.
It's a superpower too. It's like Mahomes, where you can just say, I don't care who the group is, I can work with it. And it's almost like you can't game plan for just one player. Like Tucker Kraft is a really good tight end and athletic, yards after the catch stuff. Like there's just all these different players. I just think that Love, we're all agreeing on this, he seems undervalued because Caleb Williams feel like players that are ascending or like are about to make the jump. And we've seen Jordan Love do this before. Yeah. And he's only 26 years old.
So to Betz, you were talking about actual pass rate, just to hear the raw actual attempts, so his first 7 weeks, which there's 2 games missed, but this is, he played all of week 1 essentially before hurting his ankle on I think the final throw or something like that. But so up through week 7, he was averaging nearly 36 attempts a week. I'm going to remove the injury game and then just the rest of the season out, 26 and a half pass attempts per week. Like a 10 passes dropped like per week. That's wild.
I wanted to just throw out Kyler in this tier really quickly because he had the same fantasy points per dropback. Because I hate myself and I just want to bring up Kyler, who I have in Dynasty. He had the same fantasy points per dropback as Bo Nix. Okay. And the Cardinals, I did a little bit of research, but I didn't remember their season that well, other than like, hey, why did they never throw to Marv? And why is Marv never open? But they led the NFC West in scoring differential, which is crazy to think when you see other teams that had 10 wins. They're favored in 5 of their first 6 games this season. And then when you look at all the team implied total points for this season, they rank 9th in the NFL. The Cardinals, 9th highest team implied total on the season. Now that helps that you're playing in a dome and so I just think Kyler...
They had a couple beatdowns really helping. The week 2, plus 31 against the Rams. Where'd that Jets? Week 10 against the Jets, plus 25. Yeah, like they had some blowout wins that definitely helped that. But so if you follow the show, we are on the main fantasy football bars. Like we are Cardinals fans. I promise that we are. Yeah, we're unapologetic about it. But I promise you, we are fair of what we think fantasy wise about players from the Arizona Cardinals, and it's been obviously last year we had the optimism for Marv, but there wasn't team optimism in Arizona. There is this year. There really is. Like, I mean, having improved year to year under Gannon, all those things, a nice juicy schedule to open things up. As much as it would be cathartic to just write Kyler Murray off and be like, I'm done with all of this, there is, I think, a fair world that exists of halfway through the season, everyone's looking at Kyler going, we should have seen this coming. He had the bounce back year. Marv is Marving. He actually is the son of a Hall of Famer and was the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft. So just leaving a room for that. I think writing Kyler off completely would be at your own demise. I'm not saying be aggressive and target him. It's just like, I got to get full exposure to Kyler Murray. Just don't write him completely off.
The offense, I mean, they're top 12 in points per game and yards per game. They run the ball really effectively, 6th in EPA per rush. It's a good offense, and you don't feel it all the time because last year it was McBride, Connor, and then it felt like everybody else was disappointing.
It was every 4th week, Marv.
But it's there, and I think Kyler's one of those guys that doesn't feel as exciting as he used to. And you look at the other guys in this tier, May, Caleb Williams, and they feel on the move up. But I would be happy to have Kyler as my QB1 in a SuperFlex league. I have May and Kyler. And I just kind of piecing together in this tier who I have. And they both feel good. And there is some trajectory up.
I'll tell you what a stat that I'm just now discovering as I look at it. Now, obviously, games played is different. Kyler finishes the QB 10. You know, that's not horrifically bad, but it's bad considering what the optimism and the hope was for Kyler Murray, the fantasy quarterback, to give you an edge. That was the second most rushing yards of his career over the course of a season.
It did not feel that way.
That's what I mean. To finish QB 10 with 572 rushing yards that's impressive in the wrong direction.
That's amazing. I'm not even mad.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And we haven't seen more than a 4.0 touchdown rate for Kyler, which is below average. We haven't seen that in 4 years.
They're not going to be pass happy.
Trey McBride is well aware of what Kyler's touchdown rate was last year.
Yeah,
goodness gracious. Oh man, yeah, and they're talking about. At least I've kind of heard some rumblings of like Kyler mentioning wanting to use his legs more this year. Now
he did. Kyler Murray said that himself in an interview. He was referencing.
I would like
Jackson.
to use my legs more this year too, just for me personally.
We all have goals.
Trying to get that step count up or what?
I pickled today, so I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing okay today. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing.
Tier 5. Let's talk about these guys because you just called me a nerd because I played pickleball?
He did.
Yeah, because you're bragging about it.
Yeah.
Oh, because of my steps? Yeah, that's why. That's the only reason I
got a good pickle session this morning, so I'm on my way. Step goals.
I don't know if you guys have seen.
Check the stats, bro.
I don't know if you guys have looked at it today in our competition, but a couple of steps in there. Tier 5 is a bunch of QB2s that I kind of like in Dynasty. It's J.J. McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Cam Ward, the first overall pick, and Dak Prescott, who I think all of us love and think he's still undervalued and will be undervalued his entire career. McCarthy will be the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL for week 1. So he missed a year, but he's only 22 and a half years old. The Vikings have the craziest splits from this past year. We're going to preview them on the main show, the NFC North, but 9-1 in one-score games, and they were tied or leading on 76% of their plays. It's just a wild, over-the-top. They were always in a good position. Where are you guys at with Kevin O'Connell basically spinning the wheel again and then creating a quarterback one? Because that's basically all he's done since he's been a head coach. So are you in on that in year 1, him being like a sneaky back-end QB1, or you think like, okay, we got to wait a little bit?
I think Sam Darnold's success should get, like, obviously J.J. McCarthy hurt himself before the season even started. So your opinion on him, it would be weird if it's changed. If like there's nothing to evaluate.
Just go back to our episodes from last year.
Like, unless you're part of your analysis could be, I'm concerned about the injury. If that's how you want to take it, okay. But the success of Sam Darnold should bring you more optimism for J.J. McCarthy. Sam Darnold was the laughingstock of the NFL, was a complete and total bust of an NFL pick, and now the dude's just cashing checks. He got that huge contract from the Seattle Seahawks. So let his success give you optimism. Like, I'm fully in on J.J. McCarthy. It may not be this year that we see that top 12 performance, but I think he will. I think J.J. McCarthy can sneak in and be a top 12 guy by the end of the year. Of this group, he is the one that I like by far the most, and wild that he's the youngest. So that's a really you should be excited if you took the later pick on McCarthy in a single quarterback league and you had to wait. It's okay. Yeah, I think you will be rewarded. So I other than that, my chips are just all in. I think he's going to be great.
I agree, and I think part of it goes back to your evaluation of McCarthy coming out of Michigan. And a lot of the conversation was, well, they never asked him to throw. It was a very run-heavy scheme at Michigan. So, like, how good is this guy actually? when you start to peel back the layers and you look at his level of competition he played in his final year at Michigan and the stats in those games where he had to play against top competition from an efficiency standpoint, numbers were off the charts, especially on third down and long, which I think tells you a lot about like how good he actually is. And maybe he's not even that great, but the fact that Kevin O'Connell has gotten such good quarterback play out of everybody that he has coached, if JJ McCarthy is like league average as an NFL talent, but you get to play in the dome with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison and good running backs and a great offensive line that a lot of people are excited about, it's hard to really fail unless you are just terrible. Case in point, last year, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, like a lot of kind of success has happened here in this ecosystem, in this environment, which is why I'm so in on McCarthy. And it kind of feels like to me in this tier, the one that I could see leveling up 6 spots in rankings or something like that is JJ McCarthy based off the age and based off of projection here. So yeah, you have to take a leap of faith to make that call, but I think we're all pretty bullish on that scenario. At the same time, I'm terrified for what's going to happen with Sam Darnold leaving that system, going to the rainy Northwest, bad offensive line, lack of weapons type of situation. So yeah, I'm in, like Mike said, with McCarthy, very bullish on him this year.
Yeah, and you'll be able to see the game plan because they've been 6th, 6th, and 3rd in pass rate over expectation, no matter who the quarterback was, Cousins or any of those guys you listed. So he has a plan, and they seem to score in bunches, and they were incredible last year.
I think of this group, Trevor Lawrence is the hardest evaluation. There's like Jared Goff, but he'll be 31. He is who he is. Like he is. You don't want him as your QB1, but he can fill in for you all the time. Or he's a great QB2 to have. Dak will be undervalued, but he's 32. And if we're talking dynasty, he doesn't have forever, but he'll be great while he is starting. And then Cam Ward, I don't know. We'll see what the Titans could do. But Trevor Lawrence, like we've seen a lot of Trevor Lawrence. Can Cohen fix it? Because when I watch Trevor Lawrence play, I'm not inspired. I'm not overly optimistic about what I have seen from him so far. But what Cohen did with the Bucs can't be ignored, despite his doofiness. So where are you guys with Trevor? Like, are you going to stay passive, or are you going to make an aggressive move to try and sneak him onto the back of your bench?
I think the hype with Cohen pushes his perceived value higher than I think it should. And through 4 years, he hasn't hit 18 fantasy points per game in a season. He had a QB8 season, but if you go back and look at that season, a lot of the quarterbacks were hurt. And in all my studies, if you are a first-round quarterback and you can't hit 18 fantasy points per game in your first 4 years, there's only one that's ever done it again. It was Baker, and Baker's an outlier situation where he somehow comes all the way back around and gets a different system. So I bet against the
Baker
hype
wasn't
of a
18
player.
his rookie year?
Baker, no.
No, he wasn't.
So
you're right.
So I don't know. I just think you're trading for a player that the price is baked in, that this guy in the offense, Liam Cohen, is going to make the leap. So he's not like in our rankings. I feel fine at QB 17. I feel like people are pricing him more as QB 12 or 13. And I don't feel like you have to, especially in one quarterback league. It doesn't matter. And in a SuperFlex league, I'm not trading away assets on the assumption when there's a bunch of guys in this tier, right? Like I'd be happy with Dak, who's going to be way cheaper for the next 2 to 3 years. I'd be happy with McCarthy. Cam Ward, who we got to see if he runs. That's the big thing. Like in college, 8.3% of the team's rush yard share, that's really low. That's like, you're not going to end up doing it in college, but who knows? Who knows if that's his coach next year. So I have no idea. Betz, are you a T-Log guy?
He's tough, right? Because I get all the excitement and get the hype. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. looks like a superstar and all those things, and Liam Cohen's exciting. But like you said, at some point, this comes back to the player level as well. And I think Lawrence is a decent NFL quarterback as far as like ranking him 1 to 32. But even if Liam Cohen gets the best of him, right? Like, what is the best of Trevor Lawrence for fantasy? Is it quarterback 8 again, quarterback 9. But like, if the quarterbacks 6, 7 to like 13 are all within like a half point of each other on a per game basis, Trevor Lawrence is unlikely to be the reason you win your fantasy league this year or like be a huge difference maker. Now in SuperFlex as a quarterback too, sure. But I don't know if everybody else is buying the hype, like Kyle said, and thinks that he is all of a sudden going to make this huge leap. I'm having a tough time buying that. But in SuperFlex leagues, I think he'll give you solid quarterback 2 numbers. The problem is you can get that pretty easily for a cheaper price, most likely. So yeah, I kind of find myself like stuck on Lawrence because I get the excitement, but at some point, man, you have to do it.
All right, let's wrap up with this final tier. I just want to, just a parting thought. Every year we have guys at the very end in a SuperFlex, ranking system. We're like, I have to stick this guy there. I don't even know if they're the starting quarterback. And the stat I always give is a third of the league, they turn over every single year of who the starting quarterback is. So at least 10 teams are going to have maybe a potential different starting quarterback in week 1 next year. Is there anybody in this final group, this is past QB 20 in our rankings, that you just want to give a little love, just a quick parting thought to? I might be asking Betz to talk good things about Michael Penix, but I'm going to say Justin Fields because I wore the shirt today because he runs. Do I think he's their quarterback next year? 40% chance.
What did he sign in free agency? Was it a 2-year deal?
Yeah, but it's basically a 1 and we'll see.
Yeah.
I think it was 30
on Penix,
guaranteed.
I think Penix is exciting for the upside case. I'm doing this huge like training camp preview article, and in it, I'm looking at like one question for each franchise and each team, looking at depth charts or whatever for fantasy. And my question for the Falcons is just like, is Penix the dude? Because the Falcons are basically telling themselves he is by trading away their first next year and kind of saying like, we're going all in with Penix. His pressure to sack ratio last year was awesome. That was a calling card coming out of Washington. We saw him really support great weapons at Washington. Rome had a pretty disappointing season. Like, how much of that was helped by Penix being great in college? Like, I was kind of down on him from a prospect, but man, it's hard to argue what he did in those final 3 games. Now, caveat, 2 of those were against the Giants and the Panthers last year, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I just think with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, his willingness to push the ball downfield, I think we'll get some spike weeks from Penix. But if he's not going to run, then obviously there's a cap ceiling. So I think Penix is like a solid, middle to back end QB2 to have on your squad. I was definitely more optimistic writing this article than I was earlier this offseason.
All right, Mike, any name you want to give some love at the end?
There's a couple guys to be optimistic about. And I will be the one who will stand in front of the line of fire. I will support Bryce Young. I think I saw a completely different player over the second half of the season, and I still have trust in that coaching staff that they can give us a high-powered offense. And the getting McMillan in there, the signal of we're not just going to rest on Xavier Legette and be like, we just spent a first rounder on him. We need to focus on a different area. Let's let him try and progress in his young career. Which maybe Legette doesn't be there, but now Legette could be a wide receiver too, who is athletically off the charts, and you just let Tedorona McMillan, who I think he's going to be great. So it's like you have some real potential weapons here. So I'm optimistic that Bryce can rebound and turn into like a low end QB1 ish, high end QB2.
He ran enough at the end where we can actually kind of see. I get how it can work, and he scrambled. So there is enough there that you could go, I see the plan, and like you were saying, I see the signal of them taking a first-round wide receiver. We're going to invest in the offense. The offensive line is still rough.
I mean,
we'll see where
Betz,
it goes.
You share your tweet.
I don't want to be the one to admit this, but I'm also in.
He was. You were just letting me.
Obviously,
you were letting me stand there and take all the punches.
Someone has to do it, Mike, and you did it. He was terrible in the first couple starts, right? And then they said we need to pump the brakes.
Over.
Andy Dalton, get in there. Let's just take some heat off Bryce Young. give him a chance to breathe, and then go back in. When he came back after being benched, he was first in big-time throw rate, 6th in PFF's pass grade, 5th in pressure-to-sack ratio, and was tied for 13th with Patrick Mahomes in completion percentage over expected.
Beautiful.
So there are some signs of like, maybe he is good. Like the first season was a train wreck, right? But
Yeah.
we also need to give context to those situations. As Mike has said previously, there are some turds in the pool sometimes. And that was the Frank Reich fiasco rookie season, which was just so bad. So yeah, Dave Canales in year 2 in the system. You get T-Mac. I think he's a really solid quarterback too that you can get on the cheap because people are still unsure about Bryce Young. And like Kyle said, he ran a little bit. So I don't know. Would anybody be surprised if we look back and we're like, oh, Bryce Young at a very, very cheap cost outscored Trevor Lawrence this year?
No, not at all.
I don't know. I don't think that's crazy. So yeah, if you can tier down and get an extra, pick on it or something like that in a trade, I think that's potentially a savvy move. It's risky, but there's a chance.
The pressure to sack ratio is the one that stands out to me because it was the exact opposite his first year, where it was basically the worst of all time in terms of just taking sacks. And he looked good under pressure, which is not something we saw at all his first year. That's going to do it for us. Make sure you check out all of our rankings in the Dynasty Pass. We will keep everything updated in the Ultimate Draft Kit as we get news throughout training camp. Talk to you next week.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.